Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Some people are still having lunch, but we cannot wait for that, of course. The next session will be a panel session with Rhonda and I got your name just a second ago. Don, sorry.
Yes.
Don, a bit complicated.
Yeah.
No,
Tricky.
Don and Rhonda, who are here physically, and we have online 3 other panelists, and those are Timothy Summers, Nick Szydlowski, and Amanda Helton. Did I said that right?
Yeah.
And here we go.
Okay, so this is the panelist group. We're here to talk about a project that has lots of different facets. Actually, I'm gonna send out some links now and then close my Zoom on my phone because I hear myself. Okay, and leaving. So this is a project that started kind of with a couple different spokes. One of the spokes and the major backbone of this project is New Art City, which Don to my left here is the author of. He wrote New Art City. It's a 3D enabled web-based platform. It was written in the spring of 2020 in response to the global pandemic. At the time, Don was my MFA student at San Jose State University and created an exhibition space essentially for our students who lost all of their in-person exhibition capabilities. We're going to talk he'll talk a little bit more about the platform itself, but it's written in such a way that it's using an open source 3D library, a WebGL library, 3JS, HTML, CSS, and that is basically it. At the same time, this project is funded by the Knight Foundation, and we're in phase 1. But phase 2 and phase 3 start looking towards VR, XR capabilities. So the code was written in such a way that it can be VR enabled in the future. Right now, we're going to be working through a beta test that provides an archive of new media works produced in the South Bay in San Jose in California from 1984 to 2014. Phase 2 and phase 3 start looking at a digital stewardship center housed within San Jose State University. And inside the center, we'll do things like we're going to beta test reauthoring a 3D project from Tomiko Thiel, written in VRML programming language, reauthoring it for the web, basically. Operating under the assumption that HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are probably the most archival web languages or digital languages out there. A lot about the internet would have to change for the libraries to not work in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. So we can talk a little bit later maybe about what, what we mean when we say archival digital languages. You know, is that 50 years? Is it 10 years? One of the things that came up for me when I was conceiving of this project, I'll kind of back up a little bit and then maybe dig back down. I was talking with Tomiko Thiel, who her and her husband wrote an augmented reality app for her projects. And, you know, the Whitney would collect her project, but every time iOS updated their operating, you know, anytime Android or Apple updated their operating systems, the app would break. So one of the things that we were thinking about was that students at San Jose State University in the Cadre Media Lab could update her app to keep it viable so that like the Whitney could continue to show the work. We were in discussions about that when Dawn created New Art City. And I was also in discussions with our library about ways that we can share research that utilizes the VR technologies. It's really hard, as everyone here probably knows, it's really hard, to create an app that is durable, that will continue to work with the next OS updates. And it's also really hard to share the app. So what is the platform that, that where we can share this app? Apple, in the past, artists who have put apps up on, Apple's store, they've had them deleted if they're not downloaded, within X amount of time. So that's not really an archival method. So the library had a massive interest in creating a system that could share VR art projects, but also create a way to cite VR as research. So all of these things were kind of in the mix when Dawn created New Art City. And I was like, I think New Art City is a great exhibition platform, but I think it might be the solve for all of these other issues. So phase one, we're working on archiving both artistic practices in the South Bay, but also we've initiated archiving Switch Journal, which is an online journal published from 1994 to 2014. And Nick will talk a little bit about that project that we've been, who works for the San Jose State University Library. And then I also threw in some of the projects here. You can see behind me the ISEA 2006 Symposium. There was a lot of work. I don't know if anybody attended that one. There's a lot of new media work that was produced in the South Bay at that time. So a lot of the archive will probably have a special feature for that. The beta test that we're working on right now is a joint project produced in collaboration with the Japanese American History Museum. So I put in for folks on the Zoom, I put some links in there. If you all want to go back and link to this presentation, I can share that out. So you can check it out. But New Art City typically has been exhibiting new media works that artists create themselves. So it's been really hard to kind of talk about this also as an archiving platform. So I'm going to play the video and kind of talk over it. I have some notes here. So hopefully this plays. So when you land on the site, this is basically what you see, and then you pop into a 3D world.
Why are we here? Why are we here?
The sound that you hear is actually in the exhibition itself, and I'll talk a little bit about the ways that sound plays an important role.
Smiling she was, cute with a dimple.
And can play an important role for VR and accessibility. So students enrolled in 3 classes in the Department of Art and Art History work with stakeholders from the Japanese American History Museum to help produce visual objects.
My life. In fact, I've lived in Japantown all my life. This is Dr. Tokyo Ishikawa. I was born on Jackson Street in 1909, and I've lived in San Jose all my life.
Okay, so the sound assets are actually spatially located. Assets were sourced from the Japanese American History Museum, personal archives, and several digital archives hosted within the Martin Luther King Library. So these would be like traditional digital archive platforms, Islandor, etc. While there are a number of issues that could be brought out using this Kawakuromi home and families' experience, this project focused on those with relevance for our society in the challenge phase to expand and deepen civil liberties, education for the students and the public. The beta test allowed the team to compare curation, navigation, and discoverability of digital objects in exhibiting digital archive platforms with a web-based 3D environment in New Art City. Unlike traditional digital archives, New Art City platform integrates collection management and exhibition, utilizing spatial proximity, temporal texture, and architectural aggregation rather than overlapping windows or the long scroll to help researchers, exhibition designers, and public visitors make deeper connections to and between digital entries. Just as an aside, when I was working with the students on this exhibition, one of the students was asking where a PDF was located. And instead of directing somebody through a series of folders, the other student said, oh, it's upstairs on the table. And so thinking about ways that we can kind of spatialize information and make connections through a 3D environment and the ways that might be different than a traditional 2D research environment. So the users can also create a log. There's a chat and like an exhibition log that's currently in use. The other thing that that can do is allow specific 3D assets to kind of migrate through different exhibition rooms or spaces. And we can attach kind of a folksonomy. So, you know, every time something is exhibited in a platform, the curators or the visitors can kind of log information that stays attached to the object as it moves through different exhibitions. We're also integrating blockchain technology. So, and similarly, any digital certificates that kind of get attached to objects can migrate with them as they move through exhibitions. And we're also going to be focusing on artist contracts. So when you upload a particular asset into the exhibition, artists can stipulate how this can be used and how it might need to be reauthored in the future. So like what would be the bare minimum requirements for this work to stay the work. Once it's uploaded to the server, all of the assets can be bundled and downloaded as a zip file. So that in the case of a project that we'll probably Amanda might talk about in a minute, Tomiko, the artist, did not want this to be exhibited on the web. The idea is that it would always be in an installation environment. So once you use New Art City to build, and maybe Dawn can talk a little bit about how New Art City, with the backend, what that does. But once you essentially build this environment, you can download it, get the HTML, CSS, and any associated libraries, potentially even an archive browser with it, so that it's a bundled package and it can be shown, used locally. So that's not even, you know, integrated into the web. I think, yeah, so one of the things that's come up several times in this conference is the way that archiving is both kind of always necessarily looking back into the past. One of the presenters earlier today talked about connecting the dots and used the Steve Jobs quote that's always kind of, you know, backward looking. But what we save and what we preserve is also going to shape our future. And it is a political act. The act of preservation is a political act. And we kind of understand that to be the case. So one of the things that we want to focus on is both what gets archived, but also what are the tools for accessibility, and what does that look like for researchers and for artists? So with that said, I think I'm going to hand it over to Dawn. Okay, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. Hello, my name is Don Hanson. I am an internet artist and a designer, and New Art City is my main project. And you just heard a lot about it, but essentially the idea was to create a virtual exhibition space. That was the first priority. Make a space online where artists can upload whatever they want, any digital file, and arrange that in 3D space in a multiplayer environment that is easy to share. I'm a big believer in the web as a platform for preserving and sharing work, specifically because you can create work, launch it, and share it so quickly. You don't have to have a physical gallery in order to publish an exhibition on your own website, for instance. But that kind of ability is only available to like web developers or people who have skills in like building websites. So the idea with New Art City is make a place online where there's very low barriers to creating a virtual exhibition. And yeah, so that was about 2 years ago that we started this project, and it was a small team. And since then, there's I think between 30,000 and 40,000 artworks that have been uploaded into New Art City. And it creates an interesting question, because what is the difference between an exhibition space and the archive of the work itself? What is the difference between archiving and preserving work versus just indexing work and pointing back to like a representative artifact, where New Art City is both the exhibition space and it is the archive of the actual work that has been uploaded. Yeah, and we've been working with some institutions like San Jose State University, which is kind of where this project initially was created. And in the process of working with institutions, we had to make sure that the project is accessible to all people of different ability levels. And luckily with the web, there's some really great resources and ways of making digital work and websites accessible. So that was a big priority for us. So with every 3D virtual exhibition space that is published, it automatically generates a catalog view, which is all of the same metadata, because when you upload an artwork, you're going to need to say, who's the artist, what is the title, a description about it, like all of the regular metadata that you would have in an archive. And in the process of building your 3D space, it automatically generates that 2D list of works, which is what we call the catalog view.
So like that, so you can see this is Unbound, Unleashed, and Unforgiving. So the catalog view here on the right, and then the 3D view on the left. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the why that's important, both in terms of, you know, providing the data, the metadata, and, you know, a representation of the object together, but also how that works with the accessibility features?
Yeah.
And future, and like some of your future goals. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we archive one of these virtual spaces, like Rhonda was talking about, like, because it's web technology, it becomes very portable, and we can kind of zip up everything that is in the space, including the catalog view, into a portable zip file, and that becomes the kind of the artifact of the exhibition that can be held long term. And we've had a few projects already where like pieces need to be shown in a museum where they're not going to have internet connectivity, for instance, and those kind of offline versions can be like put into kiosk mode.
Yeah, and did you, I'm sorry, you might have mentioned, so the 2D view also becomes a way for screen readers to navigate these exhibitions. And some of the future, hopefully with this grant, or maybe phase 2 or phase 3, we can start beta testing accessibility features for VR. And so that might look something like a guided tour, where instead of just kind of a list view, top to down scrolling environment, it's spatialized, right? So to your left, you see, you know, and so part of the navigation of a spatialized world that doesn't prioritize visibility, but does prioritize like spatial experience. So I think that that's a really interesting feature. And one of the reasons San Jose State kind of incorporated New York City, we have really strict accessibility rules for platforms that we use, and New York City was willing to work with us to go through what's called a VPAT certification process. So that's basically an analysis of accessibility, and no other like virtual exhibition platform that we were looking at to solve a lot of the pandemic problems, but also just kind of, you know, a platform to use in perpetuity. None of the other platforms were willing to work with us on that. Okay, I think that, so yeah, this is kind of a slide representing that like code that you basically download. You download the code, you also re-download in that package all of the original assets and an indexed, a database index. So the database and the metadata, that becomes really important when we start thinking about like archivalness. So is what we're archiving the 3D experience? I think that will go a long way. I think, you know, as it stands, we can continue to experience the 3D environment as it stands, you know, probably for 15, 20 years. But then after that, the assets themselves, the XYZ location of them, and then all of the metadata in an XML file becomes really important for archiving. And that's kind of where we segue into maybe Nick, who I can't see any of the presenters here. So hi, Nick and Amanda and Timothy. Nick, are you on? And do you want
I'm here. Yeah. Hi, Rhonda. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, Nick. It's so good to hear your voice. Thanks for waking up so early. So Nick and Amanda are in California, and I think Dr. Timothy Summers is in Arizona. So Nick, do you want to kind of walk us through some of the work that we've been doing with the beta test for the Switch Journal?
Yeah, that sounds great. So I'm Nick Szydlowski. I'm the Scholarly Communications and Digital Scholarship Librarian at San Jose State University. And I've really been enjoying this symposium. I got to come to some of the presentations yesterday morning. Can you hear me okay? Is that?
Yeah, you sound great.
Oh, okay, great. One of the most exciting parts of this project, and I think of this discipline in general, is that it brings together participants from a really wide variety of disciplines. So I'm going to share an aspect of this project that involves the Martin Luther King Jr. Library at SJSU, and that is the archiving of Switch. I think we can go to the next slide here. So Switch is a journal published by the Cadre Laboratory for New Media at SJSU, which has been published exclusively online since 1995. We in the library are used to working with journals and helping students and faculty publish journals, but working with an electronic-only journal that is that early has really been an interesting project. I want to emphasize how early 1995 is for an electronic journal, especially one with a visual element. I've been researching this a little on the side, and according to the Association of Research Libraries, in 1995, there were only 675 electronic journals and newsletters of any kind in the world. And you could buy a print directory from ARL to help you find those journals. And fewer than half of those publications were distributed on the World Wide Web like Switch was. Most of them were published via email or Gopher. So this is really very early times for electronic journals, and it impacts the archiving process. I think we're ready for the next slide. So we in the library have been working with Rhonda and other faculty in Cadre, as well as their students, to archive this journal. This has some important benefits. The archive version is easy to find and cite. It's indexed in Google Scholar, and it has much improved accessibility compared to the original. We're hosting the journal on SJSU ScholarWorks, which is SJSU's institutional repository. That also means the library is able to take long-term responsibility for preserving this content. So this kind of, we're making it fit with other content that we already know how to preserve, and we're already confident in our ability to work with. I want to briefly describe the process we're using to create that archive. There's a link on the slides to the GitHub site for the project, and we're hoping to publish an article in the journal Code for Lib sometime soon with more detail on the process, but this is a brief outline. First, we use open source software called HTTrack to create a local archive of the journal site. Then we use some Python scripts to address problems in the original journal and prepare the HTML files for conversion to PDF. Those scripts fix text encoding and accessibility issues and extract basic metadata from each article. We're then working with students in the Cadre program to augment the metadata, write abstracts, add alt text images, and research the authors and artists featured in the journal. To me, this is one of the most exciting parts of the project, to involve students with the archiving process in a way that lets them engage with the discipline and also gain information literacy skills in a hands-on way. And their work has really been amazing, and it's made the archive journal much richer and more discoverable for the intended audience. So that's our project so far, and we in the library are very excited to contribute to the other parts of this project as the digital archive evolves. And I want to add, I think that there may be a lot of potential to bring academic libraries into the kind of archiving work that's being discussed at the symposium. I found in academic environments, there are a lot of other communities of practice whose work presents similar preservation challenges and digital archiving challenges. I'm thinking especially of digital humanities work. And a lot of academic libraries are already actively working with digital humanists, but I think fewer have gotten involved with new media art. So I hope we can kind of, in our project, model that kind of collaboration and show that's feasible, especially even in a smaller library, which we are in a lot of ways. So yeah, this has been a great project, and I'm excited to hear from everybody else.
Awesome. And like through the project that the archiving of Switch Journal, it's gone through a couple iterations. There was like issues 1 through 14, 1994 to I think 2001 or 2, that were like they were hand coded every single issue. So not only do we have a snapshot of, you know, articles, you know, in 1996 writing about gender and electronic, you know, space and, you know, identity and presentation, AI in like 1997, an issue dedicated to AI, and virtual worlds, I think in 1996 as well. So really interesting to get snapshots from ways that artists and researchers are thinking about it, but it's also this interesting snapshot of the history of web development and design. And so some of the challenges that we've run into are yeah, it's just, if anybody's tried to do, you know, web archiving, even on a single site, that can be challenging. But if the database and the kind of methodology is unique for each issue, that presents another host of interesting challenges. And then things like a game issue, which was literally a downloadable executable. So the entire issue that we no longer have access to. So how do we think about that? And what are the ways that New Art City, like, can we reauthor these works to create like an environmental experience of these? And so some of the issues that Nick brings up in terms of, you know, archiving for libraries, searchability and discoverability also dovetail with museum preservation, but slightly different, right? So each one of the guests today and all of the collaborators bring in a slightly different perspective. So Amanda, do you want to talk a little bit about the San Jose Museum of Art and our,
Yeah. Hi, I'm Amanda Helton. I work at the San Jose Museum of Art as the manager of digital strategy. So I'm really bringing the perspective of the museum's collections management and digital engagement, sort of in equal parts. I would say starting around the 50s and 60s, museums really started collecting digital art, and it's flourished since then in contemporary art collections as artists have continued to experiment with new and emerging technology. And that has necessarily placed a significant burden on museums that collect digital art because technology moves a lot faster than we do. And as it ages and fails, we sort of have to pivot and figure out how do we continue to uphold collections preservation and stewardship missions in the face of you know, shifting technology. So the reliance on technology of those artworks that is inherent in those artworks creates new complexity and so museum professionals aren't necessarily ready yet for these changes, but the reality is that in-house digital preservation skills and expertise are pretty much not a given at most institutions. And you're really lucky to have at least one sort of tech-savvy person sometimes. So that's something that's still really building at a lot of different institutions. And it requires, you know, a competency across a lot of different mediums and sort of, you know, physical media and digitizing things. And it's a skill set that is still really nascent. So typically this is unfamiliar territory for a lot of museums, not just in terms of actual preservation activities, but even just in evaluating their collections to set digital preservation goals or plan and policy. Our museum has collected a lot of new media work, and we're at the beginning of that process of figuring out, you know, looking at our new media collection and saying, okay, when we collected this, you know, what was the situation and what is the situation now? Which is the Tomiko Thiel artwork is a good example of hopefully what will become a sort of helpful case study for us in hopefully be instructive in that policymaking around preservation of digital art and helping us figure out how to be prepared for these changes and how to steward our collection. So a really cross-functional project like this is really exciting and honestly like just what the doctor ordered, because I think that this is really a monumental task for a lot of museums, and it's really something that has to be considered collectively, and sort of sharing information, and thinking through these issues early on is really helpful for the museum to have like access to people with different expertise so that we can like bring those perspectives in and help that inform our processes around taking care of the art that we're responsible for, but also making sure that we can continue to share that art with the largest possible group of people.
You know, and I think one of the thoughts behind the Digital Stewardship Center at San Jose State University is leveraging some of the public mandate, but also the kind of deep history. It was the first public university in California, which here the timeline in Europe, the timeline is different, I know, but that means something in the US and specifically in California. So we have the mandate to serve the public, but we also can become a public, like a service-facing institution. So we can work with San Jose State University, we can work with Leonardo to help with some of these wicked problems, because it does take so many different types of expertise. And as a university, we have folks in these fields. A couple of our partners who are not with us today, Dara Hoffman from the iSchool, the Library of Sciences at San Jose State University, who specializes in blockchain technology and trustworthiness of data. She's worked on a project that put the Brazilian rainforest owned by indigenous tribes on the blockchain, so that the government and other interested parties, it was non-corruptible data. So that's really interesting to me to think about. And there have been a couple presentations about different strategies for managing blockchain. I don't think for 30,000, how many artworks are uploaded? It's
between 30 and 40 now.
I don't think blockchain makes sense for 30 or 40,000, but in cases where somebody has minted a certificate, I think being able to kind of point back to that in a meaningful way through this database is really important. And Timothy Sumners, who is here as a representative of Leonardo, who's one of our kind of archival partners for the exhibition in phase 1, but also works at Arizona State University with blockchain technologies. And maybe, I'm going to butcher it. Timothy, do you want to do a better job?
No, thank you so much. And, you know, really, really excited to be here and with this really esteemed forward-thinking and innovative panel. I'm Timothy Summers. I'm a board member for Leonardo and the executive director of Third Horizon Initiatives at Arizona State University. My job is to identify the most emergent and innovative tech out of the future and sort of think about ways to make it applicable today. I was really glad to hear you mention one of our colleagues at the iSchool. I actually was previously at an iSchool before I came to Arizona State. And that was really an important experience for me and one of the reasons I'm just so excited about this work. But specifically with Leonardo, I advise on many areas of disruptive innovation, including extended reality, cybersecurity, which can include areas like privacy by design, security by design, trying to ensure seamless, responsible environments, and also distributed ledger technologies like blockchain and other areas of what we now refer to as Web3. This interinstitutional effort just really has been exciting to watch the development and growth. Lots of kudos has to go to Don and team for the work on New Art City, because it is quite amazing, the capabilities there. The convergence of these technologies, though, is really incredibly inspiring and encouraging for me because we are existing in this a bit of a coordination revolution. I like to think of it as a digital trust revolution in a way. We're establishing what trust and ownership mean in this digital world, and we're really forming it together. And blockchains have been a really important part of this, right? Powering novel forms of coordination. We're seeing that across money, finance, the internet, and really we've seen some of the most profound applications of blockchain through self-sovereign identity and self-sovereign digital money and decentralized finance and other spaces there. And we talked about this idea of the use of blockchain certificates and the ability to lend and how to appropriately archive and capture, these digital assets that are being created by creatives all over. How do we appropriately have a backbone that enables a decentralized, open, and permissionless sort of an environment that we might want to have in those kinds of ecosystems? And it really is a unique time for all of us. I think it's important to kind of mention that there's a sort of three different major things happening right before our eyes. The money revolution being sort of one, but where we're seeing Bitcoin, kind of this global decentralized non-state money idea, and many others like that. The financial revolution, where we're seeing decentralized finance enabling global collections of individuals to just come together without even having met each other before, and coordinating financial support and services for things that missions that maybe they feel connected to. And then also this internet revolution, specifically around interoperability and what a user-owned web means. This is the first time we're really in a place where we're starting to be able to pull apart what trust and ownership mean in these kinds of environments. And we really believe that Web3 virtual environments, like the ones we're talking about here today, will thrive, especially if online human participants can own and be a part of and participants of and part of the community. In the traditional Web2 spaces that we've kind of lived in, I mean, for the most part, users face all kinds of restrictions on the products and services that they interact with. As a gamer, I'll point out one of the sort of gaming pieces, but you can't port in-game assets from one place to another. Or how about, if you want to port a digital asset from one environment to another environment, whether it be a different university, a different artistic environment or creative environment, there really hasn't been a way to do that up until now. And there has been many discussion and debate topics around the risk of censorship around social media platforms and how individuals are able to profit from their content. So in contrast, right, with blockchain environments, we're really talking about enabling users to be able to store and trade their assets, to own those assets, and then to maybe even be able to lend those assets to others or trade them for other digital assets that they may find of value. This enablement of owning digital assets is huge. It provides a way for us to establish trust for digital objects, a sense of provenance. This Web3 concept is considered to be the future of the internet, but really, I mean, it's a vision of a blockchain-based web that includes all kinds of things like tokens, non-fungible tokens, for example. And I'm probably going to date myself a little bit here because NFTs is actually, for me, when we first started talking about this stuff, we were still calling it by its name of ERC-721, but now everyone knows it as NFTs. But there's other topics in there like decentralized autonomous organizations and other pieces of decentralized finance that we're just finding are incredibly empowering for not only individuals and creatives, but really for anyone interested in being a contributor. And for clarity, NFTs serve as a smart contracts that verify ownership of digital assets on the blockchain. They really usurp the sort of expectation that we need centralized platforms to house everything, to control and verify everything. You all are familiar with, I'm sure, the amount that art has changed the NFT space. In fact, more than 75% of all NFTs on the Ethereum network are all art related, which speaks a lot to where we are right now, just in the conversation around technology and art and how it all is coming together. We expect digital assets and digital wallets to be a huge part of our lives as well. Digital wallets allow anyone with a connected device to transact not only money, but digital assets. And, I hope that you're just as excited as we are about this work. I'm incredibly encouraged by powerful toolkits like New Art City and the empowerment of artists to create their most ideal spaces and experiences. Technology is a tool, But more importantly than the tool itself is knowing when to use the right tool for the right job. And I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to share just some of these thoughts and insights on digital trust, security, archiving, and Web3.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Timothy. We're kind of nearing the end here, so I don't know that we have time for Q&A, but maybe I can wrap up by just saying, one of the interesting things about this project is having so many different stakeholders kind of in at its inception. So some of the things that Timothy's talking about, being able to move assets freely, is that it in contrast with some of the museum's mandates, right, for kind of control and stewardship. And I don't think so. And I think one of the things that keeps coming up is the idea of stewardship rather than ownership as the model here, and all of our overlapping interests in kind of maintaining that. So I might end it there for us to kind of think about and to meditate on as we kind of move through and create with New Art City systems for discoverability, indexability, and then artist contracts upon upload that aren't massive legalese, but it's like, do you want this object to be freely, curatable? Do you want this object to, if so, does it have a time, an expiration date, or does it need to be a permission? And what's the contact information for that kind of permission? So anyway, lots of things to think about. Thank you, everyone on Zoom. Thank you, Don. And we'll end it here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just 1 minute for Q&A, and I want to say something too.
Yeah.
Because that's when you have
You're the boss.
Anyone with questions? I'm glad the room is full again. What did you say, Bonnie?
Oh, the camera's pointing there so that the remote people can see you.
Okay. No questions? I must all have been completely clear, but yeah,
we're completely opaque.
I wonder whether anybody had been at ISEA 2006 in San Jose, I think you pronounced that. Of course, we have been there.
Yeah.
Bonnie has been there, and then is anybody else in the room been there? Because so we've all been there, and I remember the great works in the museum. Amanda, in the Museum of Art in San Jose. And of course, I remember the rest. I remember the ethical issue with the pigeons. They have pigeons with little cameras or something, and
they were like geo-tracking. They wore these little geolocators, and as they flew, they tracked their movement. Yeah.
And then the animal fans protested because the pigeons didn't want trackers. That's about the story. Yeah. Okay, and Kader also played an important role in that symposium. And to Timothy, who has disappeared from this screen, but he is still on the Zoom screen, I'm sure. Timothy is very welcome to participate in the roundtable we have on ethical issues later on, as you are all, of course. We have a very short break. Bobby keeps trying to talk to me in sign language. We have a quick question.
Seeing my name is Jan Skarac, I'm a multi-media artist from Riga, Latvia. This is one of the presentations with respect to the job we've done. Still, somehow I find it kind of mixture of euphoria and some kind of not in-depth analysis of the effects of NFT and these digital structures, which how you would gonna counter the tendencies that, for example, with NFT structures, you create a small minority of few, let's say, kind of art stars who ride the wave of the initial popularity, and the big majority who is actually paying for that and ends up losing the financial incentives to continue that in the longer run. I think this has to be addressed, because I think a lot of these promises, they won't be true in a few years.
There's, you know, there's so much to talk about with NFTs. I find it a fascinating topic. It kind of forces the subject on, you know, ethical and environmental impact of computation in general. Like, so I'm running a small symposium at San Jose State University around this. So we'll actually mint so that we understand the process, but we're using a lazy minting, which doesn't actually produce the certificate, doesn't do the heavy computing until purchase. And I want to bring in there will be a couple other artists and curators who work experimentally with this. Kalani Nicole, I think, might have presented yesterday, Transfer Gallery, and Tina Rivers Ryan, who's written a couple really good articles about NFTs, will be a part of that. Wade Wallerston, who is a curator for the Canadian consulate in the United States, but also runs Silicon Valley platform. So I think there's no way we could, you know, in 40 minutes. So I kind of skirted around the NFT question.
Good question, though.
Yeah.
But NFT will be a separate summit next year.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nick, Timothy, Don, and Rhonda.